was young, I had the worst luck of making friends. Not for regular reasons. I wasn't much different than the other kids in my neighborhood, and I wasn't too weird, at least not back then. No, I was actually pretty normal, until that one Halloween night when my luck changed. For my costume that year, I wore a box wrapped in tinfoil. There were blinking lights and buttons glued to the front, and I cut 2 holes for my arms, which were covered in those flexible dryer vent hoses, with a metal climber strapped on my head and a plastic laser gun. I was a serious robot death machine. Humans beware. My mother took pictures, then followed me out on the streets as I began my rounds. Everything was fine until we reached Mr. O'Connell's house. Like us, Mr. O'Connell was new in town. I still picture him as old, but he was probably only middle-aged. He must have been rich, too, because he was handing out fistfuls of full-size candy bars, and news spread quickly that his house was the place to go. When I got there, I spoke the magic words, and he handed over the goods.
Sorry everyone, there was quite slight computer difficulties, but it's okay now.
When I got there, I spoke the magic words, and he handed over the goods. But he didn't look cheerful about it. For someone giving away full-size candy bars, he seemed grumpy, as if Halloween was a big hassle. But once I tilted my colander back to thank him, his eyes went wide. I remember his mouth hung open for a moment, then he shook himself as his face lit up with a big smile. "You're very welcome," he said. He must have turned off his porch light immediately after we left, because my mom soon noticed him stalking us. He kept his distance, but it was pretty obvious that he was sulking along behind trees and bushes and fences. Mom finally got fed up, and she told me to stay put while she walked over to confront him. I couldn't make out words, but her low, angry voice made Mr. O'Connell wilt. He kept shaking his head and apologizing until I saw him pull out his wallet and flip it open to show her a photograph. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, and she touched his arm and nodded, and Mr. O'Connell came over to kneel down beside me. Now his smile was a sad one. "You look just like my son," he said. He pressed another chocolate bar into my hand, whispered something, and made me promise not to tell my mother. I was a good boy, and I did what he told me. He said I'd be a lucky robot if I kept quiet and ate the one special chocolate bar before any of my other candies he'd given me. And aside from a minor stomach ache, I guess I was. After that night, my luck wasn't so great at making friends, because after that night, there weren't many other kids left in